Oh, it feels like I'm doing the same podcast every week at this rate. Another frustrating afternoon in SE7. Hello, everybody. Welcome into the 58th. It's 58 now, I think, episode of the From the Faithful podcast. My name is Callum. I will be your host as always. I can't tell you how much I wanted to take this pod and roll it in to just like an Easter weekend review so I didn't have to sit here for the next half an hour. But that's not how we roll on this channel. We do we do one after every game, unfortunately for me. So I have to somehow pick out the bones of a really, really, really poor afternoon at the Valley on Good Friday. There's lots to talk about. I think anyone that knows me knows that we will get to the goalkeeper. We'll do it later. I don't think it's all on him. I think that we have to chat about the midfield. I think we have to chat about the forwards. To be honest with you, I think we just need to chat about absolutely everybody because it was poor, really, really poor. And it's gotten to the point where I'm a big Nathan Jones guy. Anyone that's listened to this podcast knows that. This is not a new thing. Through the Crawley debacle, I said stick with him. Through the tough run in November and December, I was defending it. Even when he got annoyed with fans after Sheffield United, I actually understood the point he was trying to make when people were getting upset. But Good Friday was probably, it's going to be really hard not to keep saying yesterday. If I do say yesterday, you'll know what I mean Friday. It's the first time I sort of walked out of a game and went, not necessarily tactically, although I think the tactical mistakes were made on Friday, but just in terms of some of the management of the squad, some of the decisions that have been made. It's the first time I've probably really questioned them, probably since the January window. And we'll get into why that is. Before I dive in, and I'm sure I know there's some comments in there from different people. I don't know how many comments I'm going to get to today, guys. I'm going to do my best. But I've got about half an hour and I've got to eat some food before I'm on the Chronicles later. So forgive me if it's a bit shorter. But I've just come back from the women's FA Cup quarter-final game, and it's funny how much of what's happening with the women at the moment actually tracks with the men. The inability to score goals, the pretty solid defensive display, and then moments of madness or mistakes you can't recover from, and that costing you results, which is done for the last month or so for the women, and is done now for quite a lot of the season for the men, really, since the first third of it. But I don't think it's a simple fix. But they worked really, really hard against a team that's just better than them. The lowest they can finish now is third and have a playoff for the WSL side, which would be Leicester almost certainly. So fair play to them. I thought they worked really hard, and we'll see what sort of happens. But that team's going to need some pretty significant investment, I think, to compete next year. And for those that are just a fan of the men's team, I think there are some questions about, relatively the amount that's spent on the women's team is low, and they sort of promise that there will be plenty of funding for the men's team, but there's a lot of investment that needs to come from the owners over the next sort of 4 or 5 months, and I think we'll see how serious they are in terms of progressing the club as an entity forward. So let's go back to Friday. Was there any shock in the lineup for me? No. Maybe a surprise Murray Bell played. considering he got in on Wednesday morning or whatever it was. Nathan Jones confirmed in the post-match press conference. Quite frankly, he looked jet lagged. He looked tired. It wasn't good. And I don't know if anyone else has done their Player of the Year voting, but Player of the Year to me is a pretty easy three-way sort of choice. You can kind of put them, I think, in sort of whatever order. I think Lloyd Jones is pretty nailed on to win it at a canter, but you can do. I think it's Murray Bell and Tony Carey, the two that are almost certain are going to be the other two sort of second and third candidates. But that was not a good Murray Bell day. It was not a good Lloyd Jones day. I thought both really struggled dealing with the balls in between the channels, and we'll come to that in terms of setup and tactics in a minute. Three at the back, so notoriously poor at dealing with balls being played through the channels, and that's how Bristol City attacked us. And a fair play to Roy Hodgson. I think he did a bit of a subterfuge in the pre-match press conferences to about, I don't know about the injury crisis and all the rest of it. And actually, I think that he did what any manager of that sort of experience would do, playing a three-back. He went, we're going to hit them through the channels, in between Lloyd, in between Amari, in between Kane and Lloyd, and then in between the two fullbacks. More so on the Harry Clark side as Harry Clark pushes up when we're in possession. But we couldn't cope with it at times. We really couldn't cope with it. And part of that is tactical. Should he have changed it? Should he maybe have gone with the four at the back? I'm not sure. I don't think we expected Bristol City to play in the way that they did. I think that we need to be tighter. You could hear Nathan Jones at times shouting tighter, tighter. For anyone wondering, it's not getting tighter to your man. It's closing those channels down because the through balls were there very, very early on. Reece, an opportunity one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Manion's given up on it, right? It's going to go in. And he smacked it so firm with his left foot, it's basically hit the corner flag. It's one of the worst finishes you'll ever see. And so you think, okay, we've been let off here. 10 minutes later, Scott Twine, exactly the same chance, takes it, does what Scott Twine does against us and has done since he was at MK Dons, which has scored a wonderful finish. Nothing the goalkeeper can do there. Both times in behind Murray Bell. And Luke Chambers on that left-hand side. And then we did something which we can talk about and maybe better in the longer form podcast on Tuesday after the Watford game. But he kind of took the handbrake off. We were 1-0 down. He took the handbrake off pretty early. He normally waits until the second half to do it, and we finally scored a goal in the first half at home. It's a lovely. I can't remember who played the ball. May have been Doc. I can't remember. Someone plays a nice ball. Callum takes it down. Lovely little flick around the corner. Lyndon Dykes puts it in the bottom corner because Lyndon Dykes is the only player we have that can finish with any confidence at the moment. And so you think, okay, we've got the handbrake off. We've gotten pinned back a little bit. Let's go for it. And Nathan Jones takes the handbrake and pulls it straight back again. And it was just so frustrating to see it because I think that we had a moment. It's a team that hasn't won away in a couple of months. That's, they've got their fans singing, how crap must you be? It wasn't the word crap. We're winning away, and instead of trying to put a foot on their throat, really, right, and go for it, he puts the handbrake back, and so they start to play the ball around with that midfield three of Randall, Knight, and Bird, and they start weird three, isn't it? When you say it out loud like that, it sounds like some medieval sort of castle group or something, but. They started playing the ball around. They started to get the confidence back. Second half, again, was sat too deep. We gave away a couple of free kicks. The first half, actually, I should mention too, we gave away a free kick. And for anyone that's uninitiated in the Scott Twine is, in my opinion, is the second best free kick taker in the country after James Ward-Prowse. And in that first half, we had one where Mannion takes a step out to look as he's going to go claim across. And Twine is 5 inches away from putting that in the top corner because he's left it. You have to know who's on the free kick, right? Is a player like that, if you leave that sort of gap, he's going to try and hit it, and he almost did. So we got a warning. We gave away another free kick that I think was actually pretty soft, and Twine hits it into the wall, which is a pretty rare thing. And then approximately 2 minutes later, we give them another free kick at the top of our box. And Scott Twine takes it, and Will Mannion commits, the howler of all howlers, unfortunately for him. We'll get into it later. but he knocks the ball away, but tries to catch it. It ends up bouncing basically onto his goal line. He puts one hand on it, completely fluffs it, and their player goes and taps it over him. And then we take the handbrake off again. Right, we take the handbrake off and we said we're going to go for it again. And Sonny Carey misses from 5 yards. Lyndon Dykes misses for a header, and Tyrese Campbell misses as well. We'll get to the Tyrese Campbell bit a little bit later as well. I'll probably end the podcast with that because that is the reaction to that has really irritated me. If we go through those 3 chances, the Carey one's the easiest of the 3. It's bounced. It's on the corner. He's got the entire. It's on a diagonal. He's got the entire corner to aim for. Proceeds to miss it. Matty Godden has an opportunity. It's a fantastic save from Vitek. I'm not gonna. He's robbed us twice now. Playing Bristol City. Tyrese Campbell in the first game. At Ashton Gate with a fingertip, and then yesterday Matty Godden with a truly wonderful stop. And then Tyrese Campbell gets the ball, it drops down, he takes actually a nice touch, but he's leaning back and he tries to hit it and he puts it high and wide. And, it's not as bad a miss, I think, as it looks. I see those missed in the Premier League all the time. It's a difficult chance. The ball's bouncing in front of you, you've leant back. It's not great, but it's not a sitter that's been missed there. And then late in the game, Lyndon Dykes gets the header that he puts over. I think it's actually quite a difficult opportunity. I think Nathan's been a bit harsh on him there. And other than that, it was Bristol City countering us the entire game. I think Norwich, it was the same second half. Sinclair Armstrong should have scored. Reece should have scored earlier in the game. They hit the bar, I think. That probably could have gone in. Twine almost scored from a free kick. The really, really big thing, and I think the thing to focus on, and for what a lot of people will focus on outside of the area that led to the Bristol City goal. Manu made a first half save as well. I think it was Random actually, may have been Twine, which was a one for the camera, shall we say. It was a good eye for him. It needs to be saved, so it's he's got 2 good hands to it. So fair play to him. Made a couple of stops on Sinclair Armstrong, who couldn't finish his dinner. But the really, really big problem we had in that game was in midfield. And I want to start by saying it's really important to note that because it's Bristol City, I don't think people realise that Randall, Bird and Knight is a really, really good midfield trio, right? At this level, that's a fantastic 3 midfielders to have. They complement each other. They play different positions, and they rotate a bit like Middlesbrough 3 does. They're very difficult to deal with because they can all play the ball forward, they can all tackle, they can all create. And quite frankly, the level between those players and Greg Docherty and Connor Coventry they're not comparable, right? I like Connor Coventry a lot. I'm actually in the same room for those of you that are listening and not watching. That I'm changing the setup and I'll be in another room later, but I'm back in the old office now. The plasterers are done, and I used to have a Connor Coventry shirt behind me. I still have that shirt. It will go back up on the wall in the new office, but I like Connor Coventry a lot. He couldn't deal with it. It was too much. He almost dropped to play 6 centre back because we were being played around so easily. Greg Docherty actually had moments where he was winning the ball back, but he can't pass forward. He just can't pass forward, and Randall sort of knew that. He left him at times to try and play a ball, which he'd underhit or overhit, and someone would just go and collect. And Sonny Carey, I thought, was lucky to last 90 minutes, if I'm honest with you. I thought he was really, really poor yesterday. And I don't quite know why he did play 90 minutes if Ivan Nibs is on the bench and warming up and ready to go. What's the harm in giving him a try? Sonny Carey, I don't think, had a particularly good game for a little while now, unfortunately. Got the goal at Southampton. Was he great in that game? Not really. So I think teams have figured it out, right? Shuffle sort of Sonny Carey out from around the box, and we can't create anything. We don't have any pace up front. Come with a lovely ball to Dykes, fair enough. Do you do anything else the rest of the game? No. Doesn't press particularly well. Press next to Dykes at times. which was driving Lyndon mad. Just a bit of a mess, really, up front. Defensively, the line was too high. First half, way too high, which allowed Reece and Twine to run off the back of it twice. The fullbacks defensively weren't good enough yesterday. I don't understand why we've got Luke Chambers playing left wing back and he's not allowed to overlap, whereas Harry Clark is playing basically right wing and leaving space in behind. You know, Maribel's supposed to be able to cover that same space that Kane Ramsey can. He can do that. We've seen him do it. So why have we suddenly gone to the handbrake, right? The handbrake of we're going to play 5 at the back. There's going to be a 5, right? It's going to end up being 6 because Coventry will drop in and play in front of it. But even then, we can't stop teams playing through, right? And the teams can't play through; they just play around. And part of that is it's the Championship, right? Nathan's right to mention it's the Championship. It's a difficult division. It's a difficult league. All the rest of it. It is, right? But you have to be more secure than that. You have to be more secure than that. And the thing is we improved going forward in midfield when we brought Joe Rankin Costello on. I actually thought he had a pretty good performance. We put Tyrese Campbell out wide. We put Ibrahim Fuller out wide. Personally, I would have brought Fevrier on, but I actually thought Fuller was good when he came on. But JRC plays in between. So you've got the D, obviously, in the semicircle, and he plays either side of it. And it allows players like Campbell to cut in, play the ball back to him, and get a return. Right? You're moving teams around all of a sudden. When you don't have a Campbell on the pitch, you can't move teams around. It's too much in front of them. Right? And you may have a game like Leicester where a fullback puts a wonderful cross in and you score off that. But you can't create anything in behind them. Right? We got the goal that we scored was because they were playing a fullback at centre back, right? Most centre backs follow that run, but he's a fullback, right? So it's frustrating. It's frustrating as anything to watch. I say on this podcast all the time, if you're going to play a 3 or a 5 back, width is so important. And what are we not playing with again at the moment? We're not playing with any width, right? I look at that midfield and I go, the last time we won a game, Conor Cody started, played 90 minutes and was fantastic against the team that was second in the division at the time. He hasn't played a minute since. We haven't won a game since then. In that time, he hasn't played. Because we badly missed the leadership ability. Someone to tell people there's a player running off you, there's a player coming to the side of you. Watch this man. Play here, stay here, go there. Right? And now I've gone from having a 34-year-old goalkeeper with experience to a guy who's playing, his 5th championship game? So he's not going to be able to tell players to do this, that, or the other because he hasn't seen it either. So I've lost 2 players that have that experience, right? To replace them with one, the goalkeeper's made a mistake and that mistake has been coming. We'll come to it later. And isn't stopping some of the shots he should be stopping. And a midfield 2 who at times are getting completely outplayed and outrun and out sort of foxed in the middle. And we lost that sort of leadership ability in there. Right? And I'm being honest, these are players that I like, right? As I talk about Coventry, I like Coventry a heck of a lot. Right? He was dreadful on Friday. Like, I've got a Cam who I can't seem to drop from any period of time who's just not impacting games. And I can't play through that midfield because they don't have the technical quality for me to play through. So it's no surprise we can't score goals. It's not necessarily, we have 4 or 5 chances. Yeah, we're missing them. But Norwich had 4 or 5 chances and missed them. Bristol City had 4 or 5 chances and missed them. Wrexham had 2 or 3 chances and missed most of them. Right? It's about taking that 1 or taking that 2 and not making a mistake on the back end that leads you to win games at this level. Right? It's not about playing swashbuckling, attacking style football. We don't have the players to play like Coventry. Right? If we tried to play swashbuckling, attacking, high press football, we would be absolutely killed. Right? We tried to do it against Southampton. They put 5 past us in 40 minutes. Right? Like, we have to understand the level that we're at. And we don't have the midfield players to change it. But we don't have a physical enough defensive midfielder to put next to Joe Rankin Costello, right, to allow him to play to help us progress the ball up the pitch. Because we won't try Conor Cody in there with him. I think it's to do with legs, right? We need Doc's legs. What I don't need is Doc's inability to pass the ball forward. What I don't need is Coventry's inability to pass the ball forward. So I have to question Nathan Jones with decisions like that in midfield, not willing to try a slightly different combination, right? Especially when you're coming up against these really difficult midfields. Right, Cody was fantastic against Middlesbrough, against the best midfield in the division. Right, this idea he was going to be passed around, but he wasn't. He's still with a player that in Hayden Hackney, whether Middlesbrough in the Premier League or not, he will be next season. So I'm tactically that's my frustration. I don't know really how you change it without a transfer window either. Right? But there's a number of players who, you know, when I look at the club and they talk about being sustainable, I've got 50 grand's worth of wages on the bench. JRC's not playing, Kaminsky's not playing. That's 35 grand between those two. Right, a week? What's Cody doing? If I'm paying 40% of his wages, that's 15 grand. That's 50. What's Nibs on? 10, 12, 10, 11? Something like that, 8, 9, 10? So it's all great for them to sit there and be sustainable, but if you're going to have your higher earning players sit on the bench and not give players opportunities, or you're going to make those decisions, you can't then go into a press conference and say, "But I just don't have the money." You spent the money badly. Your second most expensive transfer of the window is in League One and can't play more than 45 minutes. Or he's been hooked off at half time 2 of the last 3 weeks. So we're over reliant on a left wing academy kid who his own fans are singing blooping useless at. That's why we are where we are. Somehow we are the best of the worst teams in this division. Right? We are the best of the bad ones. The ones above us are not bad. Right? Some of them are wildly inconsistent, your QPRs of the world, but they're not bad football teams. Right? I hazard to suggest West Brom may not be a dreadful football team in their current form. They'll probably fall off a bit. They had a 2-goal lead against Wrexham and messed it up. But the teams around us are terrible football teams at the moment. They don't win games. So, whilst I have no problem in our first season in the Championship being the best of a bad lot, I do empathise with the people who say, actually, this is really hard to watch at the moment, because it is really hard to watch at the moment. Right? And yeah, we should get the results that we need to get, and that's great. But you have to look at this and go, if I'm the guys in charge and I look at where the money has been spent, I've got a striker who scored 6 goals all season, right? Who was in League One. I've got a right winger in terms of most expensive signings. I've got a right winger who's in League One and can't play more than 45 minutes. I've paid 3.5 million for and threw a temper tantrum. I've got a goalkeeper. I made my highest paid player, and my manager said I don't have a number one goalkeeper. I've got a guy on loan from Wrexham on really big wages who was playing in teams that were winning and now doesn't play at all. Right? I'm playing mostly my League One players who I liked from their League One years. Right? We have to change it up. We have to change it up. And so that's where I have my doubts with where we are at the moment. And I can say it when we're relatively safe because I'm not saying it in some sort of dramatic, we're going down fashion. Right? We are the worst of the bad teams. The teams above us are not bad. The teams above us are inconsistent. We need to get into the inconsistent category next season. Right? That's what we're aiming for, really, is to become inconsistent instead of streaky. Because that's what we are. We pick up most of our points in streaks. So, you get a point at Watford, you beat Preston, you beat Sheffield Wednesday, you're safe, it will come in like a 7-point run if we're going to do it. We just need one more win. You just need 51 points to be pretty sure you're going to step. We've got the best goal difference of any of the teams in that level as well. But Nathan Jones' teams are all about winning moments, and we don't win moments at the moment. Right? So now that I've laid out all of the problems in other places, right? Because I don't want this to turn into a pile-on on goalkeepers. That's not my intention here at all. But we have to talk about the goalkeeping situation, and then we'll talk about the Tyrese Campbell-Brewing situation. And then I'll take some comments, and then we'll call it an evening. I walked into the Valley on Friday, and I walked down to my seat. I sit right behind the goal. I moved to the East Stand next year, but I'm right behind the goal at the moment in Block E. And quite often the players do their shooting warm-ups on that side. Normally the backup goalkeeper goes in to face some of those shots. Thomas Kaminsky didn't face a single shot. He sort of walked around, he picked the ball around a little bit. I know that body language. I've had it myself when I've been relegated to be a backup in different things. That's not a happy player. Not a happy player at all. And I can understand why. To me, and I think I said this on the post-match after Norwich, to me, you probably had enough cover to change that at the international break. Right? It's all great. Nathan Jones talking about meritocracies. And he can say, oh, I didn't promise anyone the number 1 shirt. He may not have said the words. But if you give someone the actual number 1 shirt, you make them the highest paid player at the club. Their expectation is they're your number 1, right? And so he was looking really, really aggrieved, and I sort of understood it, right? Because I think 3 of the 4 home games we've lost, Mannion hasn't made a save that he should have made, right? Wrexham, he should be saving that. Norwich, it wasn't really until I watched it back on the replay. I thought he is a much better shot than it is. It's not. It hits him in the palm. To hit your goalkeeper in the palm, you should be saving that. Like, that's wrist strength. You should be stopping that. If that hits you in your hand, you should be saving that, even if you see it late. Right? If it comes down and sort of hits you at the bottom of the finger or the top of the finger or whatever, but you know, you can make the excuses, but you have to be saving that. It's not a particularly difficult height either. And then Friday, that abhorrently awful howler, which, you know, I feel for him afterwards. He looked as if he wanted the world to swallow him up. I've been there. It's awful. Right? But he shouldn't be in that position anyway. And I use Preston as a really good example of this. Now, Everson is a better keeper than Kaminsky at this point in time. That is true. Right? Everson's a better keeper, and I think that's really important to note. But the backup for Preston wasn't so bad. Their form wasn't good, but he wasn't a dreadful goalkeeper. Right? The moment Everson was fit after 3 months, Heckingbottom put him straight back in. Right? Most managers in the Championship will make that change. Parkinson didn't at Wrexham because Danny Ward is a dreadful keeper. Right? If you're the guy who has personally the most clean sheets in the division, when you come back from injury, you expect to go back and go. Right? And your career is spent time in the Premier League and all the rest of it. And you've got a guy who was the backup at Cambridge 2 seasons ago. You expect to be going back and go. You know, I'm not saying he's right to. I absolutely hated that sort of show of pouncing around and all the rest of it. I hate that sort of stuff. We all know that. I'm not defending him. But it shouldn't get to the point where he's doing that, because you should be having a conversation with him as a manager. Right? And this mistake has been coming. Right? Like, Oxford, near post, almost gets beaten right before half time, right? He gets a warning in this game. Twine has one that goes over his head. Right? And there's been some drop crosses. There's been some times he's come for things and almost been chipped. There's been times when he's come to kick something and had to retreat. The position is not quite right. And also, I don't know if anybody's noticed, teams now shoot from outside the box against us. They're doing the shooting from outside the box again, right? And it sounds really, really stupid. But the reason why he's making so many saves is teams are taking so many shots from outside the box. We shorten the field for the opposition. Right? They get to 22 yards and they go, I'm going to have a hit. He can't get down to this. Right? Rathbone was proven right. Right, Norwich was proven right. Twine was proven right yesterday. You know, and that's not to, you know, I'm not saying that anyone that thinks that he shouldn't be replaced and you prefer the fact that he comes for crosses and that sort of thing. I'm not saying you're wrong. Right? You're welcome to have that. But, you know, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. Right? Fair enough. But my sort of riposte to that would be, look at what's happening, right? If you replace the goalkeeper for those goals that have gone in, if you take away the Oxford penalty, I think Kaminsky saves all 3 of them. And you might have flapped at the free kick and sent it out for a corner, but it wouldn't have gone in. Right? And the thing is that we don't actually concede that many crosses. Teams don't cross it that much against us because we have Lloyd Jones back there. So a couple of flappy crosses isn't really the end of the world for us. What is the end of the world for us if you can't save a shot when someone takes you in 20 yards? And I hate to do it because I think Man Uni's a consummate professional. I think there's a good goalkeeper in there. But whatever happens next season, he can't be the number one. They have to go and get themselves a goalkeeper, and that doesn't mean you have to get him from the higher divisions, right? Swansea of Viseru. I know he went to Burnley as a backup, but you can find them in other places. I really like Sam Tickle at Wigan, actually. That's a player I might be very interested in, especially if Wigan don't survive. I think they will survive now, but that's a player I'd be very interested in. Right, that's a player that I think shown a lot of the qualities you need. Right, but you got to make the question is, will you change it on Monday? I don't know. If you listen to the post match press conference, it didn't sound like you were saying, "Oh, we made all the other saves." That's great, but we only conceded one goal. But we conceded the one goal. So I don't really know what else I can say on the topic. That is my opinion. So let's move on. Just the final thing, just before I take the comments and I'll read through. Sorry, I wanted to get through all this stuff before chatting to you guys live. As much as I love doing it, I just wanted to get through all the stuff because there's a lot from that game. But when Tyrese Campbell missed that chance, and I've explained why that chance had been missed, he's leaning back. It happens. I've seen Premier League players miss it week in, week out. Right? It's a more difficult chance than it looks. Right? Should he have hit the target? Yeah, probably. Right? I'm not defending the fact it didn't hit the target. I'm just saying that what it didn't deserve was your bleeping useless at our own kid. Just no. The guy that I sit next to is a glass half full type gentleman, a very nice man. And even he was like, that's wrong. Right? That's our kid. Kid's been with us since he was 6 years old. Never done anything to bring the club into disrepute, never disrespected fans, never, right? Not done anything to anyone, right? He's a proper professional. He shows up on time. He does his job. He's an international footballer. Right? He's called up now for every squad by his country started a World Cup playoff match. Most clubs, you go, yeah, this is really great. This is our kid. We'll celebrate that. We, scapegoat. And all I have to say, because I don't even really want to give that sort of stuff time of day. It's embarrassing, quite frankly. It's embarrassing, and it's the wrong thing to do to your own kid, right? And I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave it there because I don't know why it keeps happening. I don't know what's causing it, right? But it needs to stop, right? You don't have to think you should play football. That's fine. That's your opinion, right? Booing your own kid, taking the mick out of your own kid, right? Who's actually played pretty well when he came on, I thought, on Friday, right? It's wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. How many clubs do people do that at? Probably many, actually. But you know what I mean. Why do that, right? If you want kids to stay at Charlton, if you want kids to play for us who come through our youth academy, which has produced a number of excellent footballers, then they have to be treated better than some of our kids have been this year by people. Right? Because Tyrese might have Nathan Jones say, I'm going to play you, you're going to be fine, I want you to sign a long-term contract extension. But if I can feel the toxicity, surely he can. That's a confidence player. So instead of helping him with his confidence, we're just going to start smacking him down. Much like people do on every show and every sort of bit of audio, every single video that you'll hear, there'll be someone making a point about Tyrese Campbell. He's one player of 11. One of 11. Right, let's take some comments. Hello to Robert. I've been doing well. Very frustrating again. I was pretty disappointed when Nathan Jones took Callum off. It was about 10 minutes before Godden came on. We were trying to equalise pace. He took him off for the pace. We needed pace up front. That's why he did it. You can't run 4 strikers with 15 minutes to go. And also Godden and Callum are really, really similar. They're both shorter strikers. If you have 2 of them up front, they just kind of get in the way of each other rather than sort of complementing each other. That's why he's done it. Sam. Hi Sam. How you doing? Well, I only got over the result before the game. Before the game tomorrow, it's definitely going to be a challenge. If they turn up like Friday, can see a 4-0 Watford coming. Yeah, we were terrible. We were pretty terrible, and we should have had a point. Right? That's why you can't make mistakes like that. We did find that odd. I was sort of explaining, saying back to Robert, for those listening, that he changed it. That was common partnership was okay. Midfield were crap in, especially how we are. Yeah, but it was great, but they weren't creating anything. So it was okay, but there wasn't any creation. So what he wanted to do was he changed formation. Basically, he went 4-3-3, or 3-4-3, depending on how you want to look at it. But did it work? I don't think it did particularly, but it did make us look slightly more dangerous. So maybe it did work actually. Now I say that. So they've been all weekend training and worked while they were so poor on Friday. I think part of it is you can have a bad day at the office, right? You can just play badly. Bristol City are not a bad side, right? I think probably they've got problems at the back, but we don't create enough to really make that an issue for them, right? We can only score one goal against a team that's playing a right back or a left back at centre back. That tells you everything about us going forward. Tommy, hope everyone's having a good Easter. Shame about the women's team in the FA Cup. It was so close. Yeah, it was there, and they played really, really hard. It's really, really difficult with the thing above. Sam agreeing with him. But yeah, so yeah, he's agreeing with him on them coming close. Yeah, they worked their socks off. They looked absolutely knackered afterwards, and I think that you can be proud of that. Hopefully, gives them confidence going into those final two games. I don't know why the Birmingham home game has been scheduled the same day as Swansea. Completely ridiculous decision from whoever's made that, which I assume will be the FA. Thomas, I didn't see a midfield. Don't disagree with you, mate. I really don't. It was bad in that middle bit, but part of it is that those are three excellent players, and they made us look bad. Right, that was the player when Plymouth fans went down. They went, "That's the one player that we have that really is the step above." I think they thought Hardy was as well. But that was the player that any Plymouth fan will say when we're going down. That's what I was saying this to a friend actually. To repeat that trick, if Oxford go down, you have to have a look at Brannigan. Right, you have to have a look at him and just sort of see if you can tempt him down an extra 60 miles. Right, but that's how you're going to be able to build at a reasonable cost, is to buy players from teams that go down. I think he'll probably have interest from teams that are probably willing to spend more money than us. But you've got to have a look at the teams that go down. You've got to look at them when they go, "Oh, I really like this player. We're going to need another left back." I'd be very interested in Jack Curry at Oxford as well if they go down. Right, Josh Murphy at Portsmouth. Right, if they go down, right. You got Ty John, the young prospect at Blackburn. I don't think you can get some of these players, but you got to look at the best of the teams that go down and sort of see if those players are available. Yeah, I spoke to Bell when he walked in, and they said him and TC only got back Thursday morning. Didn't Nathan Jones say something weird about them actually being on different flights? I don't quite understand that. I think he said that TC was back earlier, which I don't really understand. It must have been Thursday. It must have been it, but it sounded a bit confusing. Bell looked a bit fatigued. I wonder why. You look jet lagged. Quite frankly, I said it to someone as soon as we started. It's actually one game that is difficult though because Gillespie doesn't have the pace to do. Twine would have had a field day, although he sort of had one anyway. Lloyd Giles player, no doubt player of the year. I think so. I've had my moments with Lloyd at times when I haven't been quite as positive as everybody else, but this year, there isn't the doubt. There's nobody else really that deserves. I think I know people are voting for Bell or for Carey or whatever just to make sure that they're on the ballot and all the rest of it, and I think that's fair enough. But for me, yeah, it's Lloyd. He did look tired, so I know that Cody didn't use Cody instead. Yeah, Cody's not really left-footed. That'd be why. And him and Lloyd together is probably too slow. Yeah, Chambers is very poor. Just go forward with the ball. I thought Penn overjoined at one point. He's being told to tactically. There's a tactical decision. You can see it because Clark is bombing forward on the other side. So yeah, it's a tactical thing, and I don't understand it, especially once TC is on or when TC is starting. You need to give him an overlap because it's constant 2-on-1s. Right, what does JRC do when he comes on? He comes on almost sits behind TC to give him an option to get that second defender out of the way. What do you know? TC all of a sudden is beating his man because he's got the ability to at least can move that second defender off him. If I can see it, I'm just the guy in an office, going in a bedroom. Can get my head around why we allowed Twine so much space the whole game because he finds space himself. He's a mover, right? He's constantly shifting in and out. of the defence is constantly shifting in and out between players. It's really hard to man mark him. So either you're going to stick a dock on him or something and try and man mark him out of the game, or you're going to have to sort of hope that your defenders can pick him up. And our defenders didn't pick him up particularly well in that game. Hoping there'll be some changes tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to see Cody come in. I would be. People are going to hate it. I'd be stunned if TC doesn't come in for Callum as well. Oh, is it saying it's 1-0? Apologies on my banner. Sorry, let me edit my banner. That's silly of me. Lost 2-1, of course. So let me just fix that. Oh well, it's just been the entire podcast. It said it said 1-0. But yeah, there you go. There you go. I've changed it. Apologies, everybody. Not very professional of me. Let me know, love him for what he's done, but he simply doesn't have a plan B. I mean, he did change to a 4-3-3. The issue is that squad doesn't have a plan B. We're trying to build the plan, but the plan B is going to be built this summer. It's going to, there's a reason why Nathan St. JRC will play a lot more next year, because you need a physical number 6 behind him. So you need to have that sort of you need to have that physical player next to him so he can focus on the ball carrying stuff. But I think probably in front of him, you need someone that's more creative as well, because him and Kerry will just be both trying to run the ball forward. What you need is we need to try and just see over the last 6 games whether Harvey Nibbs is good enough or not, and make a decision on that, because that changes. Again, that's why I say I would be pretty stunned if Jordan Clark isn't a Charlton player if Luton don't go up. It's possible for Luton to go up. I don't think it's likely, but if Luton don't go up, that's a player that fits that system like a glove. You can play him with JRC, and then you can get yourself a more physical number 6. Hey presto, you've got a midfield trio that works better than the 3 that we have at the moment. I shot in the Charlton management handbook. You don't have a plan B. Yeah, I wouldn't say Bowyer and Powell are great plan Bs either. It's hard to have a good plan B when you're in the position we are. It's easy for Frank Lampard to, because look at the riches he has at his disposal to sort of change it a bit. But even teams at the top don't change that much. Does Stoke have a plan B with Robbins in charge, one of the best managers in the division? Probably not. To try to think of another one. Does Parkinson's Wrexham have a different sort of way of playing? Not particularly. It's a lot of it's to do with just having the players that allow you to switch that around. It's why Davies, I think, is such a disappointment at the moment at Birmingham, is that he's got the riches to do it, maybe except for a couple of positions, but he could change it, and he's just sort of refused to. I was worried more about next season than Callum and I was. Well, the other thing to be worried about is the fact that obviously there's going to be no Sheffield Wednesday next year. Yeah, people are questioning the owner's investment, but they've stumped up $2 million for Conzo. That's not my worry. I know there's plenty of money next summer. This is my concern is not whether the owner's going to put money in. My point is probably more the that it's going to be costs in different places. Obviously, we've got to do the extension of the dugouts. Can you believe it was Oxford of all teams that moaned about that? By the way, the team with 3 stands. For goodness sakes, anyway. But they've got to do that extension. I think they want to do the audio at the Valley as well. That's what I was chatting to someone. They were saying that the audio was, and then it's about 6 months. They were saying it's going to be the audio that they're trying to look at. And that's expensive. And then you've got the women's team, hopefully will have a promotion and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of investment that needs to go in. I mean, they funded a £16.1 million loss, right, with their own money. It's not a loan to the club. So it's, done a lot. Stuart's agreeing with me, our early goalkeeper. Vitek's a cracking keeper. He's going to be playing for a team probably top level in maybe somewhere in the Bundesliga, maybe in Holland somewhere in the Europa League or Spain. Someone who's got like Europa League or Conference League football is that good. We'll probably do what Hein did at Arsenal and go off to a team in to a decent side in La Liga or whatever it is, just to kind of to further that development. Whether he can be United's keeper in the future, I don't know. Now that Sonny Lamans has kind of come through. Was Liebert injured? Yeah, ankle injury. It said on the club website when the launch was announced. Thomas saying well said. I'm not sorry we're saying well said about, but I appreciate it. Thanks, mate. She was saying we play well against top half teams, against bottom half we don't, for obvious reasons. Well, we can't create. Right? What did we do against Ipswich? We hit them on the counter 3 times, right? Like, we don't create enough to do well against against the bottom teams because they just sit in and they make it difficult. We created plenty yesterday because then I was centre back. We did create plenty of chances, but we created them all in sort of a 20-minute window, and it's always the same 20-minute window at the end of the game, and we're off and down at the moment, and that's what's so frustrating is we're not defensively secure enough for that first 70 minutes to allow us to have that last 20 minutes where we're really going at people, right? It's not like a Stoke. Who's injured, Jamal Lowe. Did I say something about Jamal Lowe? You have to let me know, Robert. Yeah, Brannigan and Brown. Yeah, you could look at Brown. That's another player I've mentioned before. It's Curry. Curry would be very interesting at left back. And then you need to look at overseas. I think you're absolutely correct, History. You need to have a good sort of overseas market. I think Collins is a good example of a player that hopefully you can find overseas because a player like that with that sort of potential probably is worth a lot more than 2 million if he's coming from even from a top team in League One. If you went to go and buy one of the sort of Cardiff starters, they've got a lot of young kids coming through now. Cardiff. If you went to go and try and buy that right back, whose name I've completely forgotten, the Welsh right back, good luck getting him for less than 3 or 4 million quid. So that's why you need to sort of look in the overseas market. It's difficult to get the overseas market right because you need players that fit a sort of very specific way of playing in terms of physical attributes. Apparently, it's going to be Man United's number one keeper next year. No, he won't. It's Sonny Lamans as their number one, and he's played very well from United. So Vitek will be. Is it worth taking Jamal Lowe? It's actually a good question. Potentially, I actually when we talk about Lowe, there's Max Lowe as well as the left wing back for Wednesday. I hadn't really thought about Wednesday's players. It's actually a really good shout. The player I'd love if again I've mentioned this many times on this podcast, but if he ends up being a free agent, you could look at Jan Valery's a player to look at. I think he's on loan somewhere with a view of basically trying to get them out of that contract because they can't afford it. But yeah, I mean there are a couple at Sheffield Wednesday have a look at. I don't think Jamal Lowe's a terrible shout. But yeah, Max like left wing back I might have a think about. And they've got Bernard, don't they, at centre back, Duchamp Bernard, who's had a couple of injury issues, but it's a centre back that might be of interest. But yeah. So there will be players when they go down. As I say, I think Pompey's probably Josh Murphy's the player everyone will be looking at. The goalkeeper is it Hamid. He might be an interest to some people. But yeah, you probably got to look at a few of them. We'll start with the lads we got on loan. Yeah, I mean, I think Clark is the one that. So I think Dykes is the obvious one that I think you offer the contract to. You ask him what he wants, and you probably just pay him it. I think he fits the Nathan Jones system like a glove. I think Clark, if the number's reasonable, I think you could make that signing as well. Cody, I don't think so. I think you probably want to go and find yourself a proper number 6 from somewhere. And the wages are really high, and his kids are at school in the Northwest, so probably that'd be difficult to get done. Chambers I would have done, but actually the more I've seen it, the less I like. If you're not going to allow him to overlap and use the left foot that he has, I'm less interested. And then Fevrier, if it cost me Tanto, I'd make that swap. I've made that clear. I actually think Fevrier brings something every time he comes on. I think there's a real player in there, but I've always liked him. I liked him when he was at Stockport. I liked him when he was at Colchester in League 2, so I'm probably not the most accurate. But yeah, I'm a little bit biased in terms of that. All right, well, I'm going to leave that here. That ended up being a lot longer than I expected it to. But there's just a lot to talk about with that game. Apologies again with the banner for those of you that have been looking. Thank you for flagging that, Sam. But for those of you listening, thank you so much for doing so. Some of you left reviews on the Apple podcast. I really, really appreciate you doing that. It really helps me out, especially and the listenership has increased massively really since the Millwall game. So I really, really appreciate you all listening to me for an hour of your lives. So thank you for doing that. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, you're watching, please do subscribe. It really does help me out. But I will see you all Tuesday. It's going to be Tuesday after the Watford game, and we'll chat through the trip to Vicarage Road. There's not really a preview for it. I don't really have time. But Watford are in and out, shall we say? So we'll see what Watford shows up. If you want some more content and you're live, come join me on the come join Emma and I. We'll be on the Chronicles at 8. Back to being a guest finally. I have to host it. So I'm sure we'll talk more about Bristol City and look ahead to the Watford game there. All right, and as we're going to Watford, remember, we're still standing. Bye for now.